You're listening to a Pop House Network podcast for developers by developers. Hello and welcome to the Stack Podcast, episode number 71, recorded on March 20th, 2026. And March 20th happens to be my brother's birthday. My brother does not listen to this podcast, but just in case he does, happy birthday, John. All right. So this is like our second podcast of the year. We've still done a very bad job of having an actual cadence, but thanks for joining us. And this time we actually have the whole gang. We have Josh, Daniel, and Ian all here today. Hello, guys.
Wow.
How's it going?
Hey, everyone. Hey.
Yeah, it is nice to get all of you. I feel like it's always like, one or two other people than me. So this is cool.
Yeah.
Um, so this year's been kind of a weird year because the weather has been totally crazy for us in the States, especially us on the East Coast in the States. So I think we've had like a huge ice storm. We've had tornadoes. The kids missed like a week and a half of, no, 2 weeks of school almost. We had like 90-degree weather. All this has happened in the first 3 months of the year.
Yeah,
So,
it's 83 now. I guess it's not officially spring yet. So
not
we
yet.
had 80, 86 or 87 yesterday. Still winter, right? And I think the
Yes.
spring kicks in tomorrow. Yeah.
Yeah, which will be nice.
Yeah, it's
So what have you guys been up to? Anything interesting?
yeah, I could go first on that one.
All right.
Not much. Still have holding on to some customers ready for the tech apocalypse to truly show its form. But also in the meantime, doing some open source stuff on type level stack, which I adore. And but yeah, that's about it.
Nice. What kind of open source stuff? Like, are you on any particular projects or just putting examples
It's
inside?
type level. So typelevel.org we had discussed in our previous
Oh,
one.
so it's
Uh,
actually the core type level stuff library.
yeah, they have
Okay.
multiple libraries. The one I'm working on right now is Scala Check, which is a property-based testing, which is part of it, fixing up a little bit of the website there. But yeah, love it.
Cool.
Nice.
Nice. What about you, Josh?
Oh, it's just doing lots of the normal day-to-day things with the family and with school and everything being in session. It's always busy with sports and all that good stuff. But
Right.
other than that, a little bit trying to learn more and more about Oracle Database 26 AI, actually. I'll talk about that a little bit later.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
There's some interesting things in there that I'm trying to learn about. So, yeah.
Cool.
Cool. What about you, Ian?
Hey, what have I been up to? Nonstop, you know, uh, drinking from the fire hose, guys. We live in interesting times, and
Uh-huh.
AI has basically taken over my life. So, in a good way, I think. Just juggling multiple agents and working on maintaining some open source stuff as well. I've got a Swift-based Cucumber testing framework. I collaborate with the maintainer on. He was looking for some help. We were
Cool.
using it, so I thought, man, this is a great framework. We can't let it, die on the vine. This guy needs some help, so I got
Yeah.
involved. And it's been interesting. People are submitting PRs written by Claude Code, and they're pretty decent actually. And you can see like the ones that have a little bit more polish than others, and it's an interesting process to code review AI generated code, right? So, and
Mhm.
some of my side projects are basically AI driven, AI generated code, a lot of it. And so to keep up with that code review workload, I kind of wrote my own code review bot, using Spring and Babel. I first started with Spring AI. I converted it over to Spring and Babel. Well, and Babel, just not Spring and Babel, but Rod Johnson's AI agentic AI
Right.
framework, goal-oriented action planner and stuff. It's really interesting, working with that kind of technology. At first, I was using OpenAI through their own interface, and I switched to Azure OpenAI, and then I recently switched to OpenRouter, which I have in our notes here today. I'd love to
Right.
talk
Right.
about that.
Right.
But it's a really interesting way to access a lot larger array of models. And through that, I kind of discovered like local models, right? So, I mean, you have cloud-based models and you have local models. Most of us are Mac guys, so I think you're probably still running Macs, Keto. And one thing I learned
Hmm.
about Macs is that we have this amazing neural engine CPU architecture that we barely tap into through our day-to-day work. So there's a framework called MLXLM, which is designed exactly to tap into that machine learning architecture that's built into the Mac. So, and you can run it's a much more efficient way of running models locally. So I'm exploring, just exploring everything I can right now, deep dive and just, like I said, fire hose. So things are good.
Nice.
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 Cool.
I've actually I haven't quite done the fire hose thing, but I'm tiptoeing into it. Let me put it that way. I haven't gotten to the point where I use have like 20 Cloud agents running every day or anything like that. But I do use lots of things, and I do use Cloud Code. I'm doing some legal work lately, so I'm not really coding every day all the time. But uh, but yeah, but I have actually been doing some conference stuff. So I was at Code Mash in January, and then Confu for the first time in Montreal,
Cool.
Canada. And so those were fun. And I feel like I went somewhere else, but I can't think of where that was. So, but yeah, it's been some fun stuff. So, been talking a lot about modernization of Java apps and things like that because that's a big part of what we do. So I've been talking a lot about that, like every chance I get, and looking also at how we use Open Rewrite for a lot of our modernization stuff, but we're also use AI too, and I think they're a really good combination together. So that's just been kind of fun. So that's my story, and it's time for me now to introduce our special guest, Mr. Michael Carducci. Hello, Michael.
Hello.
Welcome, Michael.
It is,
So
gentlemen, it is such a pleasure to be on with you.
I am very glad we finally got you on. I think we talked about it like two or three times over the last several years. So, um, so it's great to have you on, Michael. And so for those of you who don't know Michael, I'll read his bio, which is very lovely. It says he's a multi-pot I can't even read this word, dude.
Multipotentialite. It's
Ah,
basically a fancy way of saying I am a jack of all trades, master of none,
okay. So he's
but
a
not as pretentious as polymath.
Yeah, that does sound very pretentious indeed. All right, he's a jack of all trades magician. There we go. And a holistic software architect. So Michael Carducci is a seasoned IT professional with over 25 years of experience, an author and an internationally recognized speaker, which is how we all know him. Blending expertise in software architecture with artistry of magic and mentalism. He's very good at getting groups of geeks to watch him play with cards. I'm telling you. His recent book, Mastering Software Architecture, reflects his deep understanding of the multifaceted challenges of building resilient, effective software systems and high-performing teams. Michael's career spans roles from individual contributor to CTO with a particular focus on strategic enterprise architecture and digital transformation. As a magician and mentalist, Michael has captivated audience in dozens of countries, applying the same creative and problem-solving skills that define his technology career. He excels in transforming complex technical concepts into engaging narratives, making him a sought-after speaker, trainer, and MC for internal and tech events worldwide. In his consulting work, Michael adopts a holistic approach to software architecture, ensuring alignment with business strategy and operational realities. He empowers teams, bridges tactical and strategic objectives, and guides organizations through transformative changes, always aiming to create sustainable, adaptable solutions. Michael's unique blend of technical acumen and performative talent makes him an unparalleled force in both the tech and entertainment industries, driven by a passion for continuous learning and commitment to excellence. Wow, that's even better than an AI written one.
Well, I actually hired a copywriter for that because
That's why it's so good.
I am bad at flexing my own resume. I'm just like, if it was up to me, the bio would be like, well, Michael's just this guy, you know? Deep cut for the one person listening who's going to get that reference.
Yeah, I didn't get it.
I used to be with it.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Well, welcome to the show. And hopefully you can live up to your wonderful bio. I'm sure you can. Um, so Michael also has a YouTube channel, which we'll be talking about later. And it's actually much more interesting than our YouTube channel, I must say. And this is why he looks so good on camera. I mean,
Right.
look at that.
We need a studio. Damn it. That's
I
right.
know, I know. So for those of you on the audio, Michael has this like totally professional YouTube camera setup, so he just looks like, beautiful. So we're
That's
we're
right.
we're, we're like, boring
The
looking
shot is
geeks with
beautiful. I am not.
Beautiful.
Yes. Oh, you know what? Actually, I realized I didn't have my background. All right, I'm changing my background. Hold on a second here. Video effects. There we go. All right. Because my background is my office is a total mess. Okay. All right, cool. All right, so let's go through some industry topics, talk about some news, and then we will pick Michael's brain. And already like he dropped all this stuff before we even recorded, and Dana was just like hit record, and I didn't. But maybe now we'll get some of the same wisdom.
That's right.
Well, we'll get something. Yeah,
Yeah.
We'll get something out of
I'm
it.
gonna stochastic parrot my way through it.
Nice.
Which is true. Like sometimes we have the best talks before even the podcast. So
I know. Sometimes
my thing is just let's make sure we hit record now. Yeah.
we should just record and then like have see if Freddie picks out any random things out of the
Yeah, that's
talk
right.
beforehand.
Slice it together.
Outtakes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right, so our first news item is the wonderful job market. Dano?
Hey, they bring everyone down. So, I think anyone who's like on LinkedIn and has friends knows that job cuts everywhere, and finding jobs pretty hard to do as well. Michael Carducci has his DevRandomTV. I think 2 episodes ago he talks about some of the reasons or some of the big reasons why finding work is an issue. There are lots of different probable causes, anything from oversaturation in hiring to AI to just mismanagement to maybe management not knowing what AI is and what it isn't. Usually I'm going to go around that path. So first topic here is terror in the unemployment lines. Who is to blame? What is the future? And overall, what are our opinions on AI? Should we have our guests take a crack at it?
Yeah, go for it, Michael.
Yeah,
All right. Well,
easy
so
topics.
I did do an entire episode on this. We called it "How to Survive the Tech Job Winter Without Losing Yourself," and it had been a topic I'd been circling around for a little while. And what I did was I reached out to a recruiter friend of mine, a guy named Will Wiegert. He's based here in Denver, Colorado. He bills himself as Colorado's baldest recruiter, and a great guy, really thoughtful, and he stands out in amongst all the recruiters that I've worked with over the 25 years or so of my career. And we sat down and talked about this because the whole problem is way more complex than we want to think it is. Like we're always looking for the answer, the simple but wrong answer, and I think reality, in just as in so many other cases, what we really need to do is focus on the complex but right answer. Like there's a couple of different overlapping crises. One is the job market is soft. That's absolutely real. The other one is our entire machinery that we've been developing over the last few decades for hiring. That whole system is broken. And most of the takes out there will focus on one or the other. And try to maybe ascribe causal effects to the soft job market. Is it the economy? Is it AI? But the reality is, the truth is both. There's not really a single villain. Like I remember in 2020, right, COVID happened, everybody locked down, all of a sudden there was so much uncertainty. We're all worried about our jobs. And then it wasn't much later, wasn't very long before all of these companies started overhiring. If you remember this war chesting, like salaries exploded. I remember I was trying to hire somebody for one of my teams, and I was a chief architect for a big Fortune 100 financial company that you've
Hmm.
heard of, and I was chief architect there, and I had to hire some people, and I was hiring people for about their base was about 150K higher than me, and they were reporting to me. And then the internal recruiter says, "What kind of hiring bonus are we thinking?" I was like, "Wait, hiring bonus?" They're like, "Yeah, we're authorized on this role to go up to 50K." What? How about a retention bonus? No, we don't have the budget for that. So, man, maybe I
Wow.
need to start looking around. But we had that over hiring, and then we had a correction.
Huh.
And so when that correction happened, that just was a huge influx of candidates into the market. And on top of that, the era of cheap money, during COVID, interest rates went down to try to prop up the economy while everything was in chaos. Well, inflation became a problem, so interest rates came back up. So budgets were tightening. So now you've got a couple of different factors there that we've got more talent and fewer opportunities. And we're already testing the system that we have, and then AI kind of hit its stride. And essentially all that really did is take the problem and pour gasoline on it. So now the candidates are applying faster, the companies are rejecting faster, and ultimately so much of it is just bots talking to bots, and one set of bots is trying to figure out if the other set of bots is worth a human's time. And somewhere the real people in this industry disappear. And that's just a bleak place to be.
Right. But
But
it's also very US centric, is it not? Like Ian, are you in Europe right now? Like this sadness that we're experiencing here is not necessarily translated into Europe, because like Europe has a good job market, good conferences and things like that. I don't, so are you in Europe, Ian? And
Yeah,
is that your
I'm
feeling?
still here I'm in Western Europe, in Spain, and the job market here is not that strong. I think the U.S. by comparison has a much stronger IT sector, even if it's depressed a little right now. But the unemployment rate is pretty high, actually, in the south of Spain where I live. So I wouldn't say it's. I mean, it's a kind of chronic thing. Like there's always like. I don't know what the unemployment rate is here, 5% or something. I'd have to look it up, but I know it's been chronically higher than it should be. So, but yeah, I mean to Michael's point, like the hiring machinery and the timing and the pandemic and like the reaction to in the industry to maybe overhire, and obviously I don't know, I can't speak really for Europe as a whole, Dan, unfortunately, but my take on it is also like that the take I found most interesting was that it's a lot of it is a shareholder pressure on C-suite executives trying to show a profit and that the stock value is going up, using AI as an excuse to offload labor costs. So, but is the AI really able to pick up the slack and fill those roles? And I think unanimously people are, if you work in the industry, it's not able to do the full job. And that but it looks good and it sounds good to say, yeah, because of AI, we're able to cut costs and this and that. Like
Yeah.
you have the founder of Twitter with the block recently shedding I don't know how many thousands of
I think it's
employees, and
4,000.
Yeah, it was small. Like
Oh,
it's a
is
smaller
this?
company, but yeah, it was like for those block. They
Oh,
yeah.
do. Isn't block like pretty much like Square? Doesn't- or is it more blockchain related? I think it's more blockchain related.
No, I think it was Square before. It's a finance fintech startup or fintech company, right? But yeah, Jack Dorsey, right? So they shed a lot of jobs, and the reason was that it's AI that's driving that transformation. Atlassian just shed thousands of positions. But yeah, I mean, who knows, right? Can you really see behind the curtains and see like the actual? I mean, you probably can, right? They're public companies, so they have to disclose a certain amount of their operational and labor costs, their capex and opex and the stuff, and then basically boils down to either they were overstaffed or um, they're trying to increase their stock value, and it's I don't know that reasoning, justification that AI able to do the jobs is not, I don't think it holds water, but the investors love it, right? So
Well,
Yeah,
that's
I
the
mean,
world we live in.
it's the perfect excuse that
mhm.
you've got a situation because you're right. As a publicly traded company, you have to disclose certain things. And so if you just stand up there and say, we're cutting 30% of our staff, the narrative that is going to build around that is, oh, this is a company that's in trouble. But if you say, and that might be the case, and I think in some of these cases that's the real hidden narrative. But then you frame it as, oh yeah, we're going AI first. We're eliminating all of this dead weight, and we're getting super lean. We're on the cutting edge. Look how clever we are. Look how cutting edge we are. I think that's just a more convenient narrative, and it makes the company, because a lot of these things as well, improving the balance sheet, you're trying to improve the stock value, and that's
Yeah.
maybe that's why things in some cases are better in other countries. In the U.S., that the only motivation for almost everything that corporate America does is to get an uptick on your stocks,
Yeah.
but we're thinking in quarters. We're thinking as far as the next quarter, not the next year or the next decade. And that's just kind of become the culture here.
Well, I think we've always had that culture because all this stems from like Jack Welch and GE in the
Hmm.
1990s about the idea of like stock buybacks. This is what it is. It's just stock buybacks. We can fire tons of employees, make the stock value accelerate and buy it back and lather, rinse, repeat. But I think I don't know what GE is now, but I think GE isn't quite that powerhouse, no pun intended, as it used to be. So, there's a downside for doing that. But also AI is like transferring money within itself as well. I don't know what that's called, but the circular
A
funding of all
Ponzi
AI
scheme.
investments. Yeah. And so, there's that as well. And so that's part of my large suspicion of AI and the
Well,
job market altogether.
it's interesting because I think that there is actually a lot of potential. There's a lot of scary potential too, but I'm talking more about, from our perspective, like, the products and things we work on. And I think that we probably are seeing, so we've talked about like the whole corporate, like, get rid of people that you need to that you want to get rid of, and you have an excuse, right? But these tools, when they are used properly, they can make certain things more efficient, and you can do more output. You can do more. Now, that doesn't mean it's necessarily better, or as good as the output you were creating before, but you can do more. So I think I imagine a lot of startups now probably hire fewer people because they can do more with all the AI stuff. And I imagine there are teams where, like, what I'm looking at is a lot of what consultants like myself have done over the years is we built on top of our expertise, right? We know a lot of
Mhm.
things, right? But now that knowing stuff is actually more of a commodity because if I know that this system does this, whatever, in this particular case, well, if the person knows how to get it out of the LLM, they can actually find that out, right? And we've seen this with my colleague Bake Schultz. He's answered like every single question about Java server faces on Stack Overflow, basically every single question. So people will have clients and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, I remember you in Stack Overflow." And he's like, "Well, I found that a lot of times I can put stuff into an LLM and they'll regurgitate what I said in Stack Overflow." So we've seen that. So I think we are going to see sort of the bar for bringing someone purely based on knowledge is going to be higher. Um, but the ability to apply that knowledge using whatever AI stuff people want to use and all that kind of stuff, and also understanding how systems interact, and how to actually build architect systems, even if some of the code is written by AI. I think that is going to be a lot more valuable.
Yeah.
Um,
I'd like to add something to that, Keto, and just before, like on the hiring concept that we were discussing, and since we have IBM on our show notes, that IBM recently made a pivot on AI after exploring and discovering the limitations of AI as a replacement for the workforce.
oh,
They started
interesting.
increasing their juniors. The HR lead realized we need to staff for the future, right? And so as people get older and retire, expertise and knowledge leaves the company, and they need to replace that with other humans. So But to your point, and this is something that reminded me that something that Kent Beck said recently on his podcast, which I thought was really interesting, that he said some of my skills just dropped to almost nothing in value, and some of my other skills just shot up and are now worth 10 times
Exactly.
value.
Exactly.
So to your point, like knowledge is cheap today, right? But knowing what to do with that knowledge, right?
Mhm.
That's where experience, expertise, and the ability to apply judgment, exercise decision making capacity, and confronting new challenges and engaging with novel problems that haven't been integrated into the corpus of AI training material yet, right? That's where a human intuition, um, experience, and again judgment come to the fore. And yeah, architecture skills, system design, and you mentioned Java server faces. I been deep diving a lot into the AI, looking with the frontier models, right? Like working with Opus 4.6 right now is the frontier model from Anthropic. I'm trying to do some Angular coding with it, and asking it to do, NGRX, reactive JavaScript, reactive programming stuff, and it just breaks the idiomatic style of the code. Like at the first chance, like it just starts dumping log statements and lexical blocks everywhere and comments. It's like, no, man, like it's like that was like a beautiful painting, and now you turned it into a Jackson Pollock piece of art. Like what are you doing? Like
Are you
you're getting
saying a
like,
Yeah.
Pollock isn't beautiful?
no, it is, but I
Yes.
mean, if you got a
Yeah.
nice Renoir or something, Monet, and now all of a sudden you got like splash, splash. Come on, man! Like, look,
Yeah, that's definitely
read the
not what you were
room.
going for.
Yeah.
But Ian, you said something really interesting, and about just the way the skills are changing. It reminds me of that parable of the mechanic or whoever. There's different versions of it floating around, but basically they call in an expert because whatever this machinery is, it's not functioning properly. So the expert comes in, looks at it, pulls out a ball-peen hammer from the toolbox, and gives it a whack. Puts the hammer away and gives them an invoice for, I think at the time, back when $100 was a lot of money, the invoice was for $100. And of course, the client is like, that's outrageous. I'm not going to, you have to explain to me, all you did was hit it with a hammer. You have to explain to me why that cost $100. And the expert offers to give an itemized invoice. So it was hitting the thing with a hammer, $1, knowing where to hit it, $99. And I think that's kind of really where we're going. But I want to reframe this conversation for a moment because this has already happened, at least to me in my career. For a decade or more, I was a software engineer. I was a code monkey. You slide pizza under the door, code comes out. And then one day, my job was not to write code anymore. My job was to think. My job was to design. My job was to do requirements analysis. Why did my job shift? Because I got promoted to architect. And as an architect, I wasn't responsible for the actual implementation anymore. I was responsible for the design, the trade-offs, all of the deeper thinking, understanding the domain, figuring out how to put together this vast puzzle of system design. And I think really what's happened is that's happening to all of us now. If you are a coder, if that's mainly what you do, and now you're prompting agents, you just got promoted to architect. Now, maybe not capital A architect, but that's what's going on. And I think that's the shift that we really need to be thinking about is, okay, how do I lean into these skills as an architect? And just like when I moved into an architect, I gave instructions to implementation teams. Now we have our lowercase a architects, and they are giving instructions on to their implementation teams, which are just machines instead of people. And so like this whole paradigm just got more broadly distributed. And I think that's potentially a good thing.
Yeah, I have to
if
agree
we
with
approach
that.
it that way.
Definitely agree with that statement, Michael. And it resonates with my experience as well, working with the AI LLMs. And I delegate most of my coding now as well to teams or agents or other juniors. And I don't write as much code as I used to, but I still think a lot about code, and I still love code, and I read code like I read a news article or something. I get a lot of value and enjoyment out of reading code and understanding what patterns and the abstraction of the thinking that went into that writing that code. And I can see quickly whether or not this code is going to lead to problems later or not. So as an experiment, I did some quote unquote vibe coding with an AI agent. I said, go ahead, build me just the stock app was like a tax calculator or budgeting app, that was the flavor of the week a few weeks back, where that version of Claude for some reason was more than happy to generate a generic cookie cutter budgeting app for everybody who wanted it. So we're all building the same app basically, and then I said, okay, keep going. Like build it. It likes React. Okay, I'm an Angular guy, prefer Angular, but it was using React. So I said, go ahead, use it. I'm not going to stop you. Usually I'd say, no, I'd rather use this framework or that framework. I said, go ahead, do what you want. Build me this, build me that. And I could see over time, like the same bug is happening in multiple places. Like, didn't we fix that already? Oh, we did, but you're not following dry principle. So of course it's not fixed everywhere. It's fixed only in that, like that instance of it. What patterns are you actually using? What design patterns? And the LLM can't hold a thought together for more than 5 minutes. Like if you can ask it, what was the architecture you were following last week, and how are we doing this week? Are we still following that architecture? And it will read the code and go, it looks like we're not following that architecture. It's like tries to make sense of where it is at any given time, but it has trouble holding the big picture in its head for more than a few minutes at a time, it seems like. So, I mean, that could just be context management. Context windows are growing. Like Claude now has a 1 million token window, but
to me, that's just, sorry. Oh, no, I'm online. That's the thing I can't stand is just I love coding, just like Ian said. I like doing the coding, and I find that we're pivoting or having to pivot now into writing context. I don't want to write documents. Like, that's why I chose this job, because I'd rather write code than a bunch of contextual documents over time. And I find myself slipping into that more and more and losing some of the joy and fun out of that. But that's just my take on it.
Well, let me jump in real quick, because there were just a few other interesting things you talked about, like architectural enforcement, architectural governance is a problem right now, and that's one of the things I've spent the last year kind of doing R&D around. But I want to get out in front of an argument I'm hearing a lot. Well, that's okay. We're just going to throw more LLMs at it. So in the beginning we had one coding agent. You had your Claude code or whatever, and you're like, hey, do this thing, and then it goes off and does it, and you look at it, you're like, that's not quite right. And then somebody says, well, what happens if I had another agent that just kind of understands the higher level, and that becomes a supervisory agent? And so now we got 2 Claude Code instances, right? Or maybe you've got the supervisory agent and a couple implementation agents. So now you've got 3 or 4 instances, and then you're getting to dozens and more. And now you've got this gas town chaos, which I think is interesting from an R&D standpoint, but and I think some interesting ideas are going to emerge from that work. But this is not the direction that we want to be going. But what nobody's talking about, we're like, oh, we'll just throw more and more and more and more and more LLMs at the problem, is that's great right now when every token is subsidized.
Yes.
The actual cost is hundreds or thousands of times more than what we're paying right now. All of these frontier AI companies are losing money on every paying customer. Dano, you talked about the Ponzi scheme of money going, to NVIDIA, going back to OpenAI, back to NVIDIA, back to OpenAI and Microsoft and all
Microsoft, yep, absolutely.
That and the Microsoft deal is insane, but don't get me started on that.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, nobody's paying for this. Nobody's paying for the energy. Nobody's paying for the water. Nobody's paying for the GPU. Nobody's paying for the data centers. Nobody's paying for anything. Yeah. And that's the point. We're supposed to get hooked on this stuff. So when they start charging us, we can't live without it. Yeah, we can't live without it. And so,
sorry, go ahead.
Well, yeah, no, just to wrap that up. My point is, like just throwing more and more and more LLMs at the problem is not going to be sustainable long term. I think in the future, if you're in technology, it's not about who can get consistently good results with AI. I think ultimately it's going to be who can get consistently good results with AI with the fewest tokens.
Right.
The way I'm thinking
Yeah, really quick. You said Gastown. Did you just mean like Gastown as a euphemism for something, or were you referencing that
Oh, you don't know
multi-agent framework?
Gastown, Dano?
Yeah, I think you were talking about the framework, right? The Gastown
Yeah.
Yeah,
multi-agent
the
framework, or are you
Steve
talking
Yegge
about something
thing.
else?
Yeah,
We-
with like 800 agents in an entire city, with entire infrastructure
yes, he
that
was talking
Yeah.
about the product.
Yeah, that's
yeah.
why I thought. Yeah,
I'll
I
add
just
it to
wanted
the
to make
show
note of
notes.
it in the show notes because
Yeah.
you mentioned Gastown in a very fleeting way, and I'm like, oh no, we need to make a note of that in case our listeners haven't
Yeah.
heard about that.
It's
So,
it's
yeah,
interesting.
if you explain, can anyone explain it in like a sentence? Because I think no, I don't think I'm qualified to do it. Maybe someone else can do it.
I'm not qualified either. Michael or Ian, maybe Ian, do you use Gastown or know about it?
No, I'm not familiar with
Yeah,
that,
Michael,
but
Um,
you know about
so
it? I've
Gastown
heard
is
about it.
something,
I've looked
yeah.
at
So
it, but
it
I've
was a
not tried it.
project that Steve Yegge started, I think, I assume I'm saying his name right. I've never actually heard it. I've only read it.
I
But
think
Steve
it's
Yegge, the
Yeji.
guy who wrote the vibe coding book, or at least his name is on the front of the vibe coding book. I've heard, I haven't read it, but I've heard different
I have a copy,
feedback
but
on it.
I haven't read it yet. So,
Back in December, he started vibe coding a framework for managing hundreds of agents. And there's like hundreds of thousands of lines of code in there. He doesn't know what any of it does, but
Jeez.
it's an entire city of agents. There's infrastructure in there. There's a hierarchy in there. It's an experiment in massive orchestration. Think of it almost as like Kubernetes for agents, if you will.
mm,
It's that's a little bit glib, but hopefully, if you're familiar with
That's right.
Kubernetes, you can kind of start to reason about it that way. Um, he's got a Medium post describing it, and I read it, and my reaction was, "Oh my God."
Yeah.
And I don't mean to be dismissive about it. Like I said, I think there's interesting R&D that's happening, and I think some important
mhm.
insights are probably going to emerge. But like, this is not a feasible approach to building software right now.
I think he does view it as like a research sort of like basically a way to test out ideas and things, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And in fact, the
The
blog
problem is
post is
other
very
people don't
clear.
see it that way.
yeah.
But yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I would say, even, and you're right. And even though the blog post is very clear, he's like, in big bold letters, it says, "Do not use Gastown. You will die."
Right.
He has this like huge, you know, "Go away, abandon all hope, ye who enter here. This is your last chance to exit." And then he goes into it.
Man,
I
terrible.
It's fascinating and terrifying.
Yeah.
I didn't know about it until a friend of mine that's also in tech actually I haven't worked with him before, but he's a high school friend, but I worked at a company he was at back in the day. A few years ago, I should say. Anyways, he was like, "Hey, school was out for all the ice storm stuff." He's like, "Hey, I'm playing with Gastown," and I was like, What's that?"
Oh.
He's like, "Yeah, I'm generating 10,000 lines of code a day on a Rust-based game that he was working on, and he didn't even know Rust, of course, so he was learning about Rust in the process." And I was like, "What the hell are you talking about?" So that's how I found out about it. And I'm like, he's like, "Man, it burns through all your tokens." I'm like, "Yeah, I guess it would."
Yes, it does.
Oh man.
But
Very
so
quickly.
Did he ask
good,
you
good
for an
question.
investment?
No, he did not. He sent me a link to the repo though. I have not looked at it yet though. Oh.
Well,
All right. Well, we should probably move through some of the other topics so we can pick your
yeah.
brain, Michael.
I
Sure. No, let's
Yeah,
do it.
and I have one quick statement. I
Mhm.
hate the term vibe coding. I'll just go ahead and make that statement to cause a controversy.
It is a bad term.
A terrible term.
Yeah. Oh, and
Otherwise, you're going to get vibe checks. I'd rather get engineering checks, to be honest with you, than vibe
Yeah.
checks.
yeah, I'd
But
like
there we go.
engineering.
There's my controversy. Boom.
Well,
I
I'll
should
throw one more
mention.
at you then. Why are we suddenly excited about lines of code as a metric again? Didn't we figure out like
I know, right?
the last century that was like the dumbest metric in the world, and now we're like, oh, I just generated 100,000 lines of code. Now,
That's right.
developers are becoming Jack Welch style managers. Oh, look at the LOC. Look at the LOC.
Yeah,
Like
done.
how
Oh
quickly we
man,
forget.
too bad we're
Wow.
running out of time there. But I think that's one of the big things is that the CEO, C-suite folks are thinking AI is something that truly isn't. which is the thing I wanted to bring up. They don't understand that this is a probability engine. Sometimes I don't even think CTOs know about that. The engineers know about that it isn't perfect, just like Ian said. It's just like you got to nurture it. But junior developers become senior programmers. They learn over time, so you don't have to keep saying, no, that's not the way it goes. And so that's the great thing about humans, which Ian was alluding to. I don't think they know that, and so their mentality is definitely way off when it comes to what AI is and what it can't do. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so we'll go through these quickly. I think probably one of the other headlines we wanted to mention was that Confluent has finally closed its deal with IBM. So IBM is now owner of Confluent, and Confluent is the company. Their main. It's basically it's
Kafka.
Kafka, right? Yeah.
Yep.
So they're the company behind Kafka. So obviously a good AI play because they're like it's totally in the data space. So a lot of data flows through their systems. It's a logical play for IBM, I think.
IBM acquired someone else big previously. What was that?
Red Hat.
Well, even after Red Hat and before Confluent.
No, you're right. And I forgot who it is too, but there was someone else. They've been doing some interesting things because they're now courting Java developers again. They have their agent Bob just was finally released. It's been in beta for a while. I was on a list. And I'm actually an IBM champion now, so I can add
Nice.
another.
HashiCorp. That's who it was.
Yes, HashiCorp. That's it, right? Yeah, and that was a really smart play too, I think. So they're doing some interesting things. It's almost like they woke up and realized that they should uh, uh, play in the space where developers and products are again. So
we'll see.
We'll see.
All I want to say is all my friends who are long timers at Confluent, who have been accumulating equity, drinks are on you, my friends.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's right.
I was thinking the same thing. Yeah, so we'll see what happens there. Hopefully, I hope they leave it as an independent company because I feel like when I hear from the Red Hat people about because the Red Hat was basically recently merged with IBM's group for a lot of the development stuff, not for everything, but for all their Java development stuff,
Right.
and all the Java app servers and stuff, that was all merged with IBM because there was a lot of duplicate stuff going on. But it's just a very big culture difference. So hopefully Confluent will get to keep their culture the same. So
That was
I
the
would love
largest
that.
acquisition at 34 billion, by the way.
34
Red Hat.
billion.
Wow.
Yeah, HashiCorp
Yeah.
6.4 billion, Confluent 11 billion.
Yep. Next time you see Tim, I'm gonna have to get some drinks on him.
There we go.
Okay. So, Ian, you had a front end topic for us.
Front end design, right? So, obviously we're in an age of AI driven design development and architecture and everything under the sun. So I started looking at, what can AI do today as far as front end design? What are the chops like, right? So to speak. And I was pleasantly surprised. I mean, it's still, you can see the tool is fairly flexible. Like, first of all, what is a skill, right? AI skills are basically markdown files with some shell scripts organized into a folder, can be distributed as a plugin, a collection of skills. The LLMs kind of become aware of which skills are available, and they load them on demand as the task requires it. So front end design skill, if you install it into your LLM, your agentic AI workspace, and they're trying to standardize this thing now, right? So but yeah, enough about skill. So this specific skill, right, is about front end design. And it's kind of funny because there was this trend of having this sort of purple gradient on white background that all the AI generated websites had the same look and feel.
Yeah, it was really annoying.
Gradient.
Oh,
And
what was
so-
this? That's crazy.
You
Wow.
can spot them now. It's like,
Yeah.
seriously?
That's like the M dash in text.
Exactly,
Yeah,
right?
the M dash is dying.
Ruined it for all of us, by the way.
I know. I liked M dash. It was just fine.
It was good.
It was
good while it
perfect for
lasted.
my ADD brain, a thought inside of a thought. That's like
I
how I
know.
operate.
I have to
And
start
there was
putting
punctuation
semicolons
for
now.
it.
What about the M dash? We still have that one, right? That's the longer one, is it? Or
No, the M dash, I think, is the one we're talking about. There is
Yeah,
an
M dash
M
is the
dash,
one.
an N
It was
dash, and a
dash dash.
hyphen.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no, but the purple gradient is the M dash of the front end design
Yep.
world of the AI slop, right? So this design skill specifically says to avoid that, and it talks about typography. It talks about it's a nice prompt that kind of coaches Claude to design, in a different way. So I mean, if you're exploring that, it's an interesting tool. Figma is another good tool for front end design with AI that
Mhm.
I think works well. They recently made started enabling read and write mode with their MCP tool. We can talk about MCP a little bit later, but yeah, it's getting really interesting what you can do with for front end design with AI tools today. So
Yeah, it's
pleasantly
pretty
surprised
cool.
with that.
I didn't know there was I think that's a really good idea. I honestly though think it's a little wrong that it actually tells you it says use the motion library for React when available. It's like
Yeah,
it's
it's
like
a
come on, how is that a generic guideline? And like what if you don't like the motion library? Now you've taught it
true.
to use it. Like but I understand. I think the idea is good, definitely. So
I see this term AI slop, and I saw a joke on like some social media. Why do they call it AI engineer instead of AI sloperator?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
That's the
know.
I like that
operator.
one.
Yeah.
All right. So Josh Juno had to drop. He had an issue, an emergency he had to deal with.
Oh
So
no.
yeah. So unfortunately, he's no longer with us. But I will pick up for him on a server-side Java. There is now a Jakarta EE. The Jakarta EE website has been updated, so it's got a fresh new look and feel, which is really nice. So that's kind of cool. And also, there's been some progress on plans for Jakarta EE 12. So there's a whole link on it that talks about what's going to change, what's being added. And there's actually two new specs being brought in. There's the NoSQL 1.1 is being brought in, which of course is the NoSQL support. And Jakarta Query 1.0, which is new, and let's see, it unifies specification that provides a common object-oriented query language for the Jakarta ecosystem. So the idea is that you can have a query language that works across Jakarta persistence, Jakarta data, and Jakarta NoSQL. So that'll be interesting to see how that turns out.
Excellent.
So the story there. It looks like we lost Michael. Hopefully he'll come right back. Um, okay, there he
Oh,
is.
he's there. You
All right,
just had the
cool.
video off.
Oh, that was speedy. All right. Let's see what else we have here. Um, for AI stuff, which obviously we talked about plenty, but I do want to mention that my colleague Bake has released OmniHigh. We went back and forth on names for it, which is a Java library for talking to LLMs. So it's not quite as large as something like LangChain for J, and doesn't really do agent stuff like Amable, Spring AI. Well, I should say, it doesn't really do agent stuff per se, but it does do some of the stuff, it does have some overlap with Spring AI, giving you like basic APIs for talking to different LLMs and stuff. And it also integrates really well with Microprofile and Jakarta EE, but you can also use it standalone as well. So if you just want a simple library for doing AI stuff in Java, talking to LLMs, whether it's local ones or third-party providers, you should check that one out. Um, and
That's really
Bake,
interesting.
yeah,
Yeah, that's sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, another one of the best developers I've ever worked with. It's been a pleasure having him on my team lately. So definitely you should check that out.
That's cool. That looks like a really interesting little framework for Java-based AI applications.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of Spring Boot, the way you can configure all the different models. And so I was exploring similar tools and working, like I said, maybe before we started recording, but using Azure and OpenAI and
Hmm.
different platforms to, agentic or LM gateways, as it were, right? But they're typically like they're the gateways to their own models, right? So when you're
Right.
interacting with Anthropic, you're going through Anthropic's endpoint. When you're going through OpenAI, you're talking to OpenAI's endpoint, or Microsoft also hosts OpenAI on their Azure infrastructure. So Open Router is an interesting technology that or platform that acts like a marketplace of LLMs, basically, where you point it to, it becomes the LLM gateway, but you choose which model that you're talking to, and it puts an OpenAI compatible interface in front of it. So if you want to send your inference calls to Claude or Haiku model for certain tasks, and you want to use like Sonnet for some heavier lifting, or you want to use Gemini for some code changes or a code review, and you want to splurge on an Opus for a few API calls to do some heavy lifting, and then you switch back to maybe like a GPT-4 to save token costs. So the idea is like where you can easily mix and match different LLM models. You can choose which policies you want, like whether they train on your data or they don't, whether they have zero data sharing agreements in place or not, and whether they're free or they're commercial, whether, like all the different kind of parameters you want. And yeah, you just pass the model as basically a parameter to the API call and say this inference call should use, Haiku. So I've had a lot of success with it because I built this little code review bot, and I was really disappointed with the GPT 4.0 code review quality. It was very inexpensive token cost, but it wasn't really good quality code review. So I swapped it out for, I started using OpenRouter. I used Haiku. The quality went up. The cost didn't go up that much, actually. And with Mbabel, you can define agents that have different roles. Like this is my code reviewer agent, and it uses this model. I have the reviewer for the review, like the post review agent, which is more of a filtering kind of evaluation to say, is this code review worth posting or not? And have it, kind of sanity check the output of the first agent. So you can build this agentic workflow, and it's just convenient to have one URL to point all that AI activity to. So I really like OpenRouter so far. I've been playing with it. It's very easy to manage cost. So we talked about LLM costs earlier. And yes, the costs, like we're not aware of the real costs, right? We're insulated as consumers from the actual cost of running these things. And yeah, I mean, it could get very expensive in the future to do what we're doing today, even more expensive. On the other hand, the infrastructure, the data center deployments might offset that cost once the capacity is big enough to support the demand. As you know, if you're using Claude daily, it has outages every few hours, basically. Every couple times a day, it'll have some status page update. We're looking into it, downtime happens. So, but yeah, OpenRouter is an interesting way to get a taste of different models. And that kind of introduced me to like the next topic, which is MLX LM, which is an open source framework for machine learning architecture on Apple Silicon. So if you're doing any kind of local LLM experiments, and you have a Mac available to you, a recent one with Apple Silicon, M1 or greater, the later generations are even more powerful, and obviously need a lot of memory and fast GPU, but you can do pretty decent local LLM workflows with this tool. And it's really fascinating because Apple built this amazing CPU architecture neural engine for this purpose, right? But we're just not tapping into it. So this MLX framework, it's a Python API that leverages that neural engine and CPU architecture optimized for machine learning and optimized for AI workflows. And it's a 10 to 15 times faster performance than running it on like Olama or Facebook's open source agent runtime, right? So for local LLM. So I really like this MLX LM. They also have one variation, MLX VLM for the vision language models. So if you want to upload a document or an image and have it categorize it or classify it for you, or one use case, upload a PDF file and have it export a spreadsheet with all your expenses itemized and categorized for you. So
But you could do that. Yeah, I was going to say that is an easy thing to do with a local model. Yeah, I heard about this, and actually, because I was talking to someone else about this actually at one of the conferences. And because I use Olama and I also use was it Chat GPT for all or GPT for all or whatever. It's another like local Mac client that'll run different models for you, but it also handles like projects with docs, which is nice. And but yeah, he was saying you should get one that does MLX. I think Alama's talking about supporting MLX, but I don't know if they do yet. But yeah, that'll be very cool to do. I actually want to get a new Mac 'cause I have an M1 Max, so it's kind of old. So I want to get something new. I had a question for you, Ian. I'm looking back at OpenRouter.
Yeah, yeah.
Which seems like a brilliant idea, especially one that's cloud agnostic since all the cloud providers. I know you can kind of do the routing stuff with Bedrock, and probably with Azure or whatever. But I was wondering, like, why is this like OpenAI? Like, why is it called open? Is anything Apple actually open source
No,
or?
it's nothing to do with OpenAI. The
No, I'm
founder,
wondering, yeah, if there is any part of OpenRouter actually open.
not sure if it's they have open weight models on there, I believe, where you can see
Okay.
how their training data was used to some extent. But no, I'm not sure why it's called Open Rudder. I think it's just a philosophy of letting you choose which models you want and not locking you into one
That could be
vendor
it. Yeah.
per se,
And
but
yeah.
Open
unified
as in
API.
interoperability rather than open as in source or community or
Right.
Correct.
governance.
That makes
Yeah.
sense. But it's I think it's a smart play for basically any company that can get in between you and models and get a little bit off the top. It's a
Yeah,
smart business play.
and their
That's
business model is actually very reasonable. They only charge you when you top up your balance, right? You can have it auto
mhm.
top up, or you can put in $100 and then you spend it how you want. But they charge you. They don't charge you for the tokens. They charge you just like a percentage of a small fee every time you top up your account.
Okay. Oh,
So
that's kind of cool. That's nice. Yeah. Because I think like I use JetBrains AI tooling. And they now have support for Claude and Codex and stuff. And for some of the stuff you can bring your own key, but for Claude you can't. You have to basically use your JetBrains subscription. And
yeah,
I haven't looked to see how much they're charging extra on top of the Claude because it's not actually coming out of my cloud account at all. It's like totally separate.
correct.
So it's kind of an interesting model. Um,
Yeah, yeah. I was exploring the Junie for a while, and I burned through the max tokens budget in a few days. And I realized,
it's
okay,
pretty easy to get that way.
this is a different tier. I'm not going to start paying API rates at this point, like in my billing cycle, guys. Please, it's been a week. Give me at least with Cloud Code, you get a week, and then it resets, right? So I think with the JetBrains AI subscription, it's a monthly
Yeah,
quota.
it's a monthly thing.
If you
Yeah.
burn through it in a week, you're done. Like, what are we going to do for three more weeks?
Well, it depends on, I mean, I top up a little bit, but it hasn't been adding up too much because I don't do a whole lot. So,
Right.
all
A
right.
really nice
So,
one. Not to digress too much. The
yeah,
Codex from OpenAI is a great tool actually for it's right up there. Like Codex 5.2, now they're at 5.4. It's right up there neck and neck with Opus. Like if you want
yeah,
that
that's what I've
level of
heard.
sophistication, agentic coding can handle long running tasks and deep problem solving. It can go for a long time before it stops and asks you for input. So I really
Yeah.
like that one as well.
I and I
Codex.
uh I like Codex too. I haven't used it as much. I've also been playing with AMP, which is by Sourcegraph. I'll add it to the show notes. But we should
Cool.
move on. So I'm going to briefly mention a couple other things and not get into them in detail. But Java 26 is out, keeping with the wonderful 6 month release cadence. So that came out actually just a few days ago, March 17th, with primitive types and patterns, instance of and switch, which is nice.
Mhm.
GC improvements. Some cryptography security improvements. Project
They're they're
Layton. Go ahead.
they're calling it the boring release, which is a good thing. They said that Java's really mature now, and so having a boring release is a testament to how good the language is, and we just
Yeah,
skate on through to the future.
yeah, just lots of minor cool improvements. So,
Yep,
yep.
excellent.
Kotlin 2.3 is out. And Ktor 3.4 is out, and that is their right. That's their agentic framework, right? If I remember correctly.
Is it?
Yeah,
Oh, all right. Okay.
yeah. It's Where they go? Yeah, a concise multi. Wait, no, that's not it. Yeah, I
I
think
thought it was.
Ktor is their agent framework
I thought it
from.
was their like Spring Boot, wasn't it?
Oh, is it? Yeah.
Yeah,
See, this
I
is what
don't know.
happens when Josh leaves. We say we make up stuff to.
That's right. I don't know what it is. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah, it looks like it. Yeah, it looks like
so it's their
Spring
Spring
Boot's
Boot sort of thing.
Spring
Okay.
Boot for Kotlin, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, framework for building asynchronous server-side and client-side applications with ease. Okay.
Yep.
Yes. All right, cool. All right, so now we have about a half an hour left because you know this show goes on forever. So if you're still
Let's
here,
talk Mark Carducci.
congratulations.
Mark
Woo!
Yes.
Carducci.
Yeah. Do you have a special effect thing you can press, like a button where like you like poof in the you magically appear or anything?
You know, I'm a little salty about this because last night, I have a relatively new laptop. Last night, my wife said, "Is there anything you need to do ahead of the webinar and the podcast tomorrow? Like get vMix running on your laptop?" And I said, "I'll install vMix in the morning." I failed to install vMix, so all of my cool stings and motion graphics and all of the cool stuff that I would have, um, yeah, I couldn't install vMix, and I didn't want to try to learn OBS or one of these other platforms in about 20 minutes. So I'm
Yeah.
just like camera. I'm camera plugged into my laptop.
Well, at least you still have a nice screensaver in the background, so you know.
Yeah, see, that's it, it's the little things
Yes, yes, indeed. All
and
right,
a nice
so
little bokeh because I've got a real lens.
that's why it looks so good. Yeah, honestly, I'm looking at you. I know this is strange for those of you listening to the podcast, but it's like he's making me actually think I should worry about lighting, which I don't, because initially this has always been a podcast, like an audio podcast. So, but yeah, your lighting is really nice.
Yeah,
All right.
I've got a key light over here. I've got a fill light over there. It's well,
Yeah.
I've got a good lighting designer
I
and
don't even
Greg.
know what those mean. That's right.
They
I mean,
sound cool though, you know.
yeah, they sound awesome.
All right, so I've always wondered this, Michael. So you are a magician, which means you
Mhm.
actually have stage charisma stuff, which is awesome. But like, how did you get?
There it
Yes,
is. Look at
he's
that.
showing us
Neat.
his cards. How did you get into software? Like, what did you
Oh.
get bored with doing magician stuff, or because I know I heard you say in
He played Microsoft Solitaire, and that was it.
That's
It was
right.
like there's a bridge. There's a bridge between these two.
Yes,
Well,
yes.
you know, the moment was the original like Windows 3.1 Microsoft Solitaire. You could choose the card backs, and there was the one with the guy, and every now and again you could see there was a card up his sleeve, and I was like, there it is.
There it
There's
is.
my link.
My life has
No,
been planned.
but no, it's really interesting that I got two really insanely fortunate exposures in my very early years in the 1980s. One, I found a magic book at the library discard sale. That book changed the trajectory of my entire life.
Hmm.
But the second was somehow like we were a decidedly working class household. My father was a coal miner. My mother was a school teacher who quit to raise us kids, and we didn't have a lot. That's why we got our books at the library discard sale on the last day when they were just like throwing them at you. They're like, please just take them. And that book happened to still be there. But somehow we got a state of the art computer for 1987. It was an Apple II GS, which was at that time more powerful than the Macintosh, what was the best of the Macintosh line. It for an Apple II, it had a GUI, a mouse. It had a high resolution graphics, better color. It was a good machine. Unfortunately, by 1987, the Apple II was dead. It just hadn't like realized it yet. So I think about 6 months after we bought it, you couldn't buy software for it. You couldn't buy hardware for it. It was obsolete. We must have got it on the clearance, like get this off our shelf because now we're bringing in Macs or PCs or whatever else. And I read through all the books, all the manuals that came with it to try to figure out. And there was a little book on basic programming, and I taught myself basic from that book. And then I found out my neighbor was, kind of a big deal in the tech space, and he mentored me a lot in the early days, taught me how to think through problems, taught me how to flow chart, and structure my code and everything else. And when I told him that I had outgrown BASIC and I was ready for a new challenge, he decided to humble me and gave me a book on 6502 assembler or assembly language. And so I ran with it. And then he's like, okay, kid, you got moxie. And he got me online like before the web was a thing. So in the early 90s, he gave me dial-up, he gave me hosting space. Like there was a lot of cool opportunities that happened there. So when I was a kid, if it wasn't magic or computers, like I wasn't interested. By eighth grade, I think I just stopped going to school because it was so boring and stupid, and I was just working on my own stuff. I turned my life around, but that's kind of those are just details in the middle. So how did these two worlds collide? Well, I got my big break in show business as the house magician at TGI Fridays because dreams really do come true, and I'd been doing that for a while. And it was slowly dawning on me that the house magician at TGI Fridays didn't pay the kind of money that would support, the lifestyle that I had kind of hoped to become accustomed to. And I was having dinner with my mom one day, and I said, maybe it's time I get a real job. Of course, she lights up, comes around the table, gives me a big bear hug. I'm so happy to hear you say that. I can't imagine what it'd be like to raise a kid like me. That's just why I didn't have kids, because I'd rather karma kick me a different way. And she said, well, there's a guy at my church you should meet, which was her way of saying, you should come to my church. No, thank you. You interpret that however you want. But I go online, I'm looking for this guy. I didn't Google him for two reasons. One, Google wasn't a thing yet. And two, we hadn't started verbing the nouns. So I was searching on Alta Vista or Lycos or Excite, or maybe I asked Jeeves, I don't know. But I found his company website. They were like a gung-ho software development consultancy, like whatever you need, we'll build it. And it was a cool part of history because computers had entered the mainstream in business, but software wasn't caught up. So we got to build stuff from scratch over and over again. It was so cool. But I kept digging on his website and I found his personal homepage. So the youngs won't remember this, but this is, if you wanted a social profile back in those days, you didn't just like upload a picture and type in your name and come up with a handle and upload a profile picture and a banner picture. You had to open a text editor and compose your profile out of HTML tags that you picked by hand, like the pioneers from the field. And this is what he did. This was his exercise to teach himself HTML, but this guy never did things by half measure. So he didn't just like create a page and put some pictures and the obligatory animated under construction GIF. I know it's GIF, I don't care. It had his whole life story. Like he really put some effort into this. And so he talked about his background, his family. He had this big family. He was super proud of his family, how he met his wife, this whole backstory there. Like, I had this guy's whole life story and his whole family's life story. So imagine my surprise the very next day I show up to TGI Fridays and I'm going table to table doing something like this. Hi, my name is Michael Carducci. I'm the wandering magician. I was wondering, I think that's why I was wondering if you'd like to see a few tricks. Terrible line. I eventually grew out of it. And the gentleman at the table nearest me says, well, good afternoon, Michael. My name is Martin. This is my wife, Grace, my daughter, Hannah, my daughter, Vanessa, my son, Michael, and my son, Jason. And all those names like rang a bell. And then it hit me like, that's the guy. That's the guy. The guy I'd spent half the night reading about. Two ways to handle this. I handled it like a magician. I didn't say a word. I did my first magic trick. The whole family, they're like, whoa. Martin, he does this. He's like, huh. I looked at him. I said, typical right brain reaction right there. A guy like you probably studied, I don't know, natural sciences or something somewhere like Oxford or Cambridge. And for like a moment, he was shook. This rando magician at TGI Fridays just like his higher ed. And then the engineer kicks in. He starts probing. He's like, yeah, what did I study? And he spat that word like he was saying, checkmate, magic man. And I hem and haw and look at him. I look at his shoes. I look at his hands. And I, make a big show of it. Then I say, I think you have a master's degree in physics from the University of Oxford. Then his wife, she says, Michael, you're very perceptive. I said, Grace, your accent. There was no stopping me at this point. I said, and she's like, yes. I said, you're from the Philippines. And she said, yes. I said, but specifically, like I was pushing it, man. I don't know how I didn't blow it for myself. I said, you're not from Manila. She said, no, I'm not from Manila. I said, I want to say Davao City, but I don't think you're not from Davao City, maybe the Davao region. And then I named the village that she grew up in. And I did not leave that table until I had deployed every fact that I had learned the night before. And by the end of it, their food came up. They didn't care. They were riveted. Three times
Your
GM
electric
walks
bill
by.
is a little bit overdue. That's right.
Yeah. The GM walks by, taps his watch, gives me the wrap it up mode. I don't care. Like I'm in it for the long haul. And finally, I'm out of information. Well, I should probably let you eat your dinner. But before I go, I gather you own a software company. Well, I happen to be a keen amateur programmer. Like I'd been building software to get myself in trouble for years. I actually got access to my middle school mainframe in 8th grade. I didn't change my grades because I was too afraid of it. I was afraid of getting caught, and I wish I would have done it. I built tools. I built a keylogger, put that all over the place. I built a fake login screen, would load that on all the school computers and capture everybody's passwords. Yeah, great time, good times. And so I've been programming as an amateur for quite a while. And when I told him this, he stood up, looked me in the eye, and said, "You know what? If you're half as good at that as you are at this, you're hired." And that was my first job in tech right out of the gate, because I showed the guy some card tricks.
I think it's because you're clairvoyant, Michael. That's what.
Well, I did impress him. The worst thing about that story, by the way, is, in the beginning, as soon as he hires me, I'm like, well, let's get this in writing before I let him know that I actually found his website the night before. And then, I start the job and it seems like not the right time. And then, time passes. I never really got around to telling Martin this story. So maybe he's finding out right now on the podcast. He's good people and he deserves better. But it was a very cool opportunity. But I've done both ever since. And where I am now, about almost 20 years ago, I get an email, and it's a invitation to bid on a magic show, and this magic show was going to be at a tech conference, and so I write a proposal, and I realize that the buyer doesn't know that my day job is as a software engineer, kind of senior software engineer, kind of dipping a toe into the architecture waters. So I send my bid, and it's accepted because I'm a famously low bidder. And I show up, do the show, and I write the entire show for an audience of software engineers, and they love it. It's so successful. The conference organizer says, "Hey, I'm doing another conference in December. You should come to that too." I said, "Okay, is it in Denver?" "No, it's in Florida." You'll fly me?" "Oh yeah, of course." So I go do that, and before I know it, I become the resident magician in this conference series. And this goes on for a couple more years, and then finally he takes me aside. He says, "Have you ever thought about it? I think there's more to you than meets the eye." I was like, "Well, maybe." He says, "Have you ever thought about speaking?" And I said, "No." He says, "Well, think about it." I said, "Thank you, I won't." And over the last 12 years, I've spoken at several hundred conferences. I've given thousands of talks. I've been all over the world. It's been a wild adventure, but the two are inextricably linked. And I didn't realize that until one day it occurred to me that being a magician made me a better software engineer, because like knowledge is way more connected than we give it credit. There were just so many little random skills that I developed as a magician that made me unique as a software engineer and software architect. But
what's one of those skills?
Well, let's start with the most obvious is problem solving. If you think about an engineer and what engineers try to do, they try to engineer up to the limits of possibility. How close to that line can we get? How close can we get this technology to becoming indistinguishable from magic? And if you think about a magician, We start at impossible and go from there. If you do a magic trick and it's not impossible, it's not magic, it's just juggling or luck or something else. And so creating magic tricks is an ongoing exercise at engineering the impossible. I worked at a company once, and I had the reputation for making big promises on behalf of the team. Like at one point, there was some project that came up, and we were playing planning poker, and everybody else, nobody wanted to touch this. We've been afraid of it. We've been trying to kick the can on it, but finally the bill's due. And so like, okay, this story right here, and everybody pulls out the infinity card, and I pull out an 8, and suddenly everybody's staring at me. And I said, yeah, no, I think we could do that in about a week. And they're, of course, kicking me under the table. They're like, don't shut up, Michael. And I developed a little bit of a reputation at this point. So when the product owner, who was like the VP of the company, he was number 2 in the company, he says, there goes that mouth of yours writing big checks. And I said, well, if the shoe fits, or something like that. He says, so you would sign that check? And with all the bravado I could muster, because I was on a roll at this point, I'm like, you know what? I would sign that check. And he reached behind his desk and pulled out a giant novelty check that he had made. And he makes me start filling it out and sign it. There's a picture of it somewhere that I still have floating around, and there's a little asterisk on the top on what I'm promising to pay. Basically, the asterisk led to a footnote that said, "in regression testing." Basically, I was saying it would be done, but it wouldn't, be done, whatever that means. And I did it, because I just saw a solution that nobody else saw. But there's psychology skills that I learned, there's communication skills that I've learned, being able to read the room, being able to present ideas using, mentalist tricks to steer conversations and plant ideas into other people's heads. Like that's how magic trick works. That's how a lot of magic tricks work. That they do exactly what you want them to do, but they think it's their idea and they think it's a free choice. Now imagine doing that when you're proposing something to the higher ups.
You that would be very handy for parenting too.
I will never know.
I'm just saying, because I suck at that, and I watch my wife sometimes, and I'm like, I should have thought about like actually thinking about like how it can influence them as opposed to just saying this is the way it is or whatever. But yeah, that's brilliant.
And I don't, and I'm going to be honest with you, I don't know. I don't do children's events. I'm not a children's performer. I find them impossibly difficult to work with. So there might be a little bit of youthful immunity there to my Jedi powers.
But that's really handy, though. Also, the whole implanting ideas first, because there is certainly a set of people that will not do anything unless they think it's their idea. It's just the way they are. So
that's a really insightful point that you just brought in. You're absolutely right there, Keto. I hadn't considered it that way. Thank you.
All right, so so that was I'm gonna remember this big check for a long time in my head. So I want to give you. So we've got two other things I wanted to mention, and not much time. I've got about 8 minutes left. Dano, do you think you can talk a little bit longer?
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
I don't know if you have more time, Ian, but I feel like we should at least go through a couple more topics before we end. Oh, that's cool.
We're going for a record today, or did we already beat our
I don't. We haven't beat it
longest?
yet. I mean, no,
I
I
believe
think our
in us.
longest is
Yeah.
like 5 hours,
I'll just finish up on the Michael's book and the YouTube algorithms, and then we'll do our picks.
That sounds good. That sounds good.
All right.
Yeah, so Michael, I am going to stick around for a few more minutes, but then I'll let Dano finish with you.
Okay, cool. Well, Keto, thank you so much for organizing this and everything else. Obviously, I'm grateful to the whole crew here, but Keto and I have been going back and forth on this since last year on this particular uh,
Yeah.
round of let's do the podcast.
Yeah. So
Right, right.
thanks for joining us. I you know what? I am actually because of my personal interest. Can we talk about the YouTube before the book? Is that all
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
A little backwards, but
Yeah. So, yeah, the YouTube channel. If you want to lead us with that, Michael, and talk about your
Yeah.
journey and YouTube algorithms, and
Oh,
uh,
yes,
yeah, that's
yes,
and
yes.
exciting.
and why it's so hard, and what number of views do you have right now? All that stuff.
Yeah. So, for reasons that are still slightly mysterious to me, last year, my wife and I dove in and we launched a YouTube channel. It's called DevRandomTV. It's currently on YouTube, but we're going to start making some short form stuff. In fact, that's what we're going to record next. DevRandomTV. Why did I call it that? Because we're vaguely a tech channel, but every time you go in there, you're going to get something different. Sometimes we're going to talk about old ideas like Fred Brooks or Claude Shannon, dive into the history behind phone phreaking, try to connect it back forward to where we are today. I did that episode, How to Survive the Tech Job Winter. The most recent episode is why the padlock icon in your browser, the HTTPS icon that we don't even think about anymore, was once considered impossible and it almost never happened. And what the story behind it is probably one of the greatest untold underdog stories in the history of technology. So we just told that story, and it's been an adventure. The first video that we created, we were starting at zero, got a couple hundred views. The second one was the episode we did on phone phreaking, and that one right out of the gate is like 10,000. And not only that, I'm talking about phone phreaking, and if you don't know, it's the way we used to hijack the telephone system, blue boxes and red boxes and all kinds of other crazy thing, the Captain Crunch whistle. And I tell the story of the hacker Captain Crunch, aka John Draper, because he was a big person in that history and how that led to Apple. Apple exists because of the blue box, because of phone phreaking. And I get this email a couple days later, and it says, "Hey, I just watched your video on blue boxes. This is John Draper, aka Captain Crunch. We should talk." It's like,
Ooh,
holy
nice.
cow. So a month later, I'm at this guy's house and we're hanging out, and he's getting on now. He's wheelchair bound, and but this guy has some stories, man. As he's telling me these stories, you realize that he's like the Forrest Gump of the technology revolution. He was just kind of quietly meandering in the background of every historically significant event. He was an early advisor to Apple before they were Apple. He'd hang out with Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, and they'd geek out on circuit designs and things like that. He was employee, I think, like number 12 at Apple. He built the first modems. He invented the phone tree thing, and he's telling me stories about going to Russia. And he gives a lecture out there, and he meets this guy Alexei something, and he says, "I am a software developer too." I can't do accents, so just roll with it. And he says, I have a community group. Would you be able to give a talk to my group? He says, "Well, it'll be hard because I'm leaving the country tomorrow." And he says, "Oh, we'll do it tonight, no problem." And like 4 hours later, he walks into an auditorium with 600 people in there, and that's that Soviet era, like, "You're all going to this now, okay." And this guy Alexei they're talking afterwards. He says, "By the way, I invented a game. Maybe you should tell me what you think." And he plays it. This is amazing. It was Tetris before like anybody in the West
Yeah.
saw Tetris. He was standing on the Berlin Wall when it went down. He was one of the
Oh my
cypherpunks in the
God.
90s fighting for online privacy. Like this guy's just um, you know, a character. We'll just say that. He's interesting. But like that happened in the follow episode. We did an episode basically kind of giving a different narrative to on AI, because what we try to do is we try to tell the stories and give the perspectives that nobody else is doing. We're trying to zag when everybody else zigs. So everybody else kind of chasing short attention spans and short form content. We're investing in more long form deep dives, high quality storytelling, very high production value. We're basically doing the opposite of everybody else. We're talking about what nobody else is talking about. And we got 1,000 subscribers organically in 90 days. And I was like, this is going to be easy. I can't believe people say this stuff is hard. Then our 4th video drops and gets a couple hundred views. The 5th video drops, gets a couple hundred views. The 6th video drops, gets a couple hundred views. And every video we make is better than the last one. And it's almost embarrassing, because when we started this, people were saying, "Are you sure you want to do YouTube? That's a really stupid idea." I said, "I know, but my whole life is stupid ideas, and it's worked this far." And so that kind of led me to try to understand the YouTube algorithm. I thought I'm uniquely positioned here, because I've spent my entire career designing systems that I can understand and reverse engineering systems. And I thought I could figure this one out, and I was completely wrong. I haven't figured it out. In fact, what I have figured out is that nobody has this figured out. The reality is the YouTube algorithm, anybody who says they understand it is lying, because nobody understands it. That's the point. That's why we're using machine learning. Like if we could reason how this thing worked, we wouldn't need machine learning. We could just code the rules. And so that really kind of led me down a rabbit hole, but because I've been trying to construct my own mental model of how this stuff works. And one of the things is, every time somebody says something, "Oh, the algorithm likes this," and I'm like, wait, no, that's not how algorithms work. They don't like things. There are emergent properties in these systems that tend to favor certain approaches and things like that, or the algorithm is deciding to do a test. The algorithm is not. They don't have a little agent running for every single video on the YouTube platform. And so, part of it was analyzing the data. Part of it was just asking myself the question: how would, if I had to build this as a software architect, if I had to design this, how would I do it? And that led me into some interesting directions. So now I have probably a more sophisticated set of abstractions than the masses, because at least to some extent, I've got some understanding of how vector spaces work and embeddings and how machine learning pipelines work and the rest of it. But it's changed my perspective. Like the latest video got a couple hundred views right out of the gate, but I realize now that it's not done. That the challenge with an episode with a channel like ours is not content, it's distribution, it's audience alignment. And then the more you think about it, the more you realize the magnitude of the challenge that the YouTube algorithm is trying to address. It's trying to guess what you're going to watch next in this moment. So it's not even a user profile that it's like, "Oh, you like this kind of thing." It's trying to decipher what kind of mood you're in. Are you is it the end of the day and you just want some cheap dopamine? Or is it the morning and you've had your coffee and you're ready to dive into something more nuanced? And so we're actually going to write an episode about all the stuff that we've learned. And we're not going to frame it as this is how the algorithm works. One, because all I have is models. And as they say, all models are wrong, some models are useful. But the other thing is I actually don't want the traffic from the people who are trying to decode YouTube. I'm trying to sharpen my audience affinity. So it's going to be engineer coded, systems thinking coded in the title and thumbnail, but trying to understand the YouTube algorithm. We talk about that. We are going to debunk some myths and talk about some of the advice you hear, and talk about what works, why it works, what doesn't work, and why it doesn't work. Because there's a lot of bias, there's a lot of superstition, there's a lot of confirmation bias, survivorship bias. There's a lot of different things going on there, post hoc rationalizations, unfalsifiable theories on how the algorithm works. But the bigger thing that we're going to talk about, because the whole idea is it is a complex system, and complex systems can't be controlled. They can't be reasoned over really. They can't be understood, but you can learn how to operate within a complex system and how to strive to understand a black box. And then that, of course, applies way beyond YouTube into AI systems, into complex organizations and markets and everything else. But I also want to talk about, what does it mean that we're increasingly building software systems that exceed our comprehension? That we are seeing an explosion of complex systems, and what do we do about that? Or do we do anything about it? So there's a lot of meat in there. But mostly I like to tell interesting stories that other people haven't heard.
Right.
That
So you
have some
you mentioned
takeaway.
the complex systems. So you're the author of Mastering Software Architecture. So we could segue there as well.
Speaking of
Yeah,
segues.
that's right. Yeah. And
Yeah,
Ian, if you have
and
anything, please jump right in whenever. But yeah.
Yeah,
yeah.
no, it just
So
go ahead, go
go ahead.
ahead.
Go
No,
ahead.
I
No, no,
just
no,
have
no,
one
please.
thought I wanted to share in terms of what you were describing with the YouTube's algorithm, and it was just a post I saw on X the other night about uh, the difference between a Google coded front end and Google coded Google scale optimizations versus what a typical engineer might do with like
Hmm.
using a, I don't know, some kind of S3 bucket or some typical cloud-based, caching system, right? It's to achieve that kind of, millisecond latency uh, response times when you're typing in a Google search and you get back like, in real time almost pretty accurate results just from typing a few characters. And then he explained it was he met that the guy posted this said he met the one of the designers, the architect behind this algorithm or this the optimization that they used to achieve that performance using a prefix tree. I'd never heard of this data structure before, a tree or TRIE, and it's a
Hmm.
prefix tree. It's like a binary tree or a hash map, but it's a next level more efficient. I'm not an algorithms guy. I don't have a claim to understand the math behind this or anything, but just to understand that Google obviously owns YouTube and like
Hmm.
I think you're onto something with this that nobody understands the algorithm. Maybe very few people do, but the ones who do have this level of sort of mathematical understanding of the system at a level that most engineers would not be able to achieve. So I think there's definitely, I mean, it is magic in a way to us, as the end
Hmm.
users, but behind the scenes, it's math, right? So that's the interesting part, I think. I don't know. I mean, it's just an opinion.
And I think that was the biggest kind of mind-blowing moment for me, is realizing it's all just math. There's no like YouTube is saying, oh, this video is about XYZ, so let's show it to other people who like they're not classified at levels of abstraction that we can reason about. They're just the viewers, the videos, they're just vectors. And they're just in this like vast embedding space. And there are constant feedback loops with billions of events hourly. And so everything is constantly shifting and changing. You know, the two takeaways that I found with the models that I have on YouTube is one is I feel better about it because I kind of understand where we are in the process and what it's going to take to get to where we want to be. And so I don't worry so much about individual video performance anymore, because for a while I'm a fragile man. I have confidence and charisma on stage, but we put our heart into a video and nobody
We're all
watches it.
human.
I cry myself to sleep. But I was making sure nobody was laughing as I said that. But there you go. Thank you, Dano. Um, but the other thing that's really interesting is just that it's so much more primitive, essentially, at the operations that it's doing, and realizing that oh yeah, the other big takeaway is you can't really game it, because it's not like SEO where you can just do a bunch of keyword stuffing and you're going to rank higher. There's a lot of things you can't fake. You can't fake viewer retention. You can't fake positive interaction signals. I mean, you can buy clicks, but that's actually going to be terrible
Oh, you,
because
you
of
can't do anything on Polymarket or what?
yeah, I could do things like that, I guess. But I'd be
That's
betting
right.
against, I'd be betting against any one video being a breakout. But I know how the breakouts work now,
Yeah.
and it's not something you can engineer because it's an emergent outcome, and there's a stochastic element there.
Hmm.
But I know it's a when, not an if. That our only challenge is distribution, because we've got a channel that doesn't talk about one thing. It doesn't fit neatly into a box, and we're looking for viewers that don't fit neatly into a box. And so the algorithm has to learn what that person looks like in that embedding space. And once they do, that's where you start getting second order effects. You start getting compounding growth. But until then,
Cool.
it's just a waiting game until until that audience profile emerges.
Right.
But
Right.
Michael, like, you enjoy what you do, right? You love what you do. So I mean,
Oh yeah.
whether 10 people see it or 100,000 people see it, if you're on message, if you're on brand and you're speaking from your experience and what you like, and you're enjoying yourself. I mean, I think that's the best thing, right? It's like, I don't know, because I have no ambitions for, like, viral fame or anything like that. So, but if
And
I did,
ironically, I don't either.
okay, okay. But hey, no, but I get the sense, you authentically want to reach a large audience of like-minded people, and entertain, and inspire and inform, and connect. And that this is great. I think, like, that pure energy that you put out there, I think that's what's going to draw those people back to you, not the algorithm. The algorithm is almost an obstacle, right, to
Hmm.
reaching your people. You connect with people despite the algorithm, and it's, fumbling, mechanical nature, trying to optimize for this or that or the other thing. But ultimately, it's your message, it's your content reaching someone who it resonates with, who resonates back to you, resonates that message back to you in some way. It reflects back to you their appreciation, their acknowledgement, their understanding, their pleasure, joy at hearing what you have to say. So I don't know you very well on a personal level, and my advice would be just have fun. Have fun with it, and keep doing what you love. And I hope you find a large audience. I'm just getting to know you a little bit, and I really enjoy what I've heard so far. And it's great. And like, you're an author too. Dano mentioned that. I'd love to hear more about your book. Tell us a little bit about your architecture book. We're all learning. We're
Yeah,
big fans of
yeah. Let's.
architecture, and that definitely
Uh,
resonates with me.
well, so I've been practicing as an architect now for about 15 or so years, and for probably a decade of that, I've mostly been, or 10 of the last, I think 17 years, I've been an independent, hands-on software architect, and I've had regular jobs in and on and off there as well. But there was just a lot in architecture that troubled me. That you just have to fail over and over and over again. That is part of the learning process. But I always had this sense that our mental model of software architecture was incomplete, and we were just kind of doing the best we could. And I went all the way back to the beginning. One of the things that surprised me was, because I wanted to figure out everything that we've learned. One of the things I've realized as I get older is that we forget more good ideas than we apply in our industry, and consequently, it seems like we're reinventing a lot of ideas every 7 to 10 years, in the cycle. It's just like we rediscover an idea, we reinvent an idea, whether it's the lines of code, which is a bad one, or spec-driven development, which is there's good and bads to that. But it's I was just talking this morning about, in the Mythical Man month, Fred Brooks warns about the Tower of Babel, But we didn't remember that 20 years later, so we kept building them, and we rediscovered the idea in Joe Yoder and Brian Foote's paper on the big ball of mud. But so I went all the way back to read basically the entire history of literature and software architecture to see what it is that we were missing. And I'm older than software architecture. That surprised me. The first book on software architecture came out in 1989 or 1990, right around there. It was Lawrence Best, Application Architecture. We started talking about architecture in the very late 80s. And you know, and there was a lot of work there, and then we kind of had a few successes with architecture with certain patterns that emerged. And then we kind of stopped trying, we stopped thinking, we stopped learning. And architecture in a lot of circles just became about pattern selection. And it didn't work. It was a crapshoot every single time. I read a quote in, I think it was 97 Things Every Architect Should Know. It was like, software and cathedrals are very similar. First we build them, then we pray. And then I saw an idea in that was in Perry and Wolf's Foundations for the Study of Software Architecture that came out in 1992. And they were talking about the foundational primitives that architecture is composed of are architectural constraints. And they laid this out, and then Fielding did a lot of work in his 2000 doctoral dissertation, Architectural Styles and the Design of Network-Based Software Architectures. And this idea of constraints. And then I read another paper in 2016, Architecture Constraints Reused by Composition. And I realized that one, there was something there, and two, they kept saying, you know, the way these constraints interact with the ilities of your software architecture are so deterministic. And I've never heard architecture and deterministic used in the same sentence. Usually it's a crapshoot. Okay, let's build it. Why isn't it working? Okay, let's go and tweak this. Let's go and tweak that. And it's like a years-long process of trial and error in a lot of these systems. So this idea of determinism really kind of piqued my curiosity. And so I was able to kind of build on those ideas and more recent literature going back to just a few years ago to actually define essentially the periodic table of architecture that everything is composed out of, and deduce the weights of how they, you know, how a design. You can basically, so you can get design time feedback on your architecture. Now that's a part of the model that different people throughout history have had pieces of that I've been trying to synthesize and put together into one comprehensive model. And then the rest of it was just my failures, you know, including a project that was so colossally bad, even though the architecture on paper was perfect, it was so colossally bad that that the company not only shuttered the division, but they whatever was left of their software engineering in that enterprise was sold to private equity. They were just like, we're done. And it was a hard lesson, but you know, we're not the sum of our mistakes. We are the measure of our growth is not making mistakes. It's how we learn from our mistakes, and that really completed the missing part of my model. And so the goal of mastering software architecture is not just another catalog of patterns or kind of a redistillation of the current state of the art. I really wanted to move the field forward, and I wanted to basically give people a more powerful model to think about and operate in the architecture space. And that spans not just your diagrams and your ilities, but requirements analysis, balancing trade-offs, being persuasive, communicating ideas, understanding how to talk one way to the engineers and talk a different way to the business people, how to be influential, how to drive change at scale in an enterprise. So it was basically, as of this time last year, it represents my life's work and learning in software architecture in a way that is accessible, practical, and actionable. So that's kind of the broad strokes of that book.
Cool. Well, thank you. Yeah. I was just thinking of wrapping up here because we're at nearly the 2-hour mark, I think. But yeah, excellent. And so that's on Apress, correct?
That is on Apress.
All right, excellent. All right. Well, we usually finish our podcast here for some picks, and Josh had to leave here. Ian, you want to tell us about this cool MCP servers?
Yeah, definitely, Daniel. Thanks for that. So obviously, a big part of working with AI tools today, my picks to this show include three MCP servers that I've been experimenting with that I really enjoyed. One is PrimeNG. It's, as a UI person, I really enjoy. I've been working with Prime Faces, PrimeNG for years and years, and I'm a big fan of that product, that technology stack, the component library. So PrimeNG MCP server lets Claude Code or your LLM that works with MCP query the PrimeNG documentation in real time as it's building,
Cool.
instead of doing things like decompiling Java code and trying to figure out how something works. I don't know if you guys have noticed that pattern. I always find that hilarious. It can just make an MCP call and get the documentation. What a concept. And taking it to the next level is Context 7, which is another MCP tool that indexes basically all the open source documentation out there, a huge set of libraries, frameworks, tools, CLIs, APIs, whatever you want, different versions of each of those, and makes that available to you through an MCP server. So your LLM now has access to state of the art, right, up to the minute information that's maybe printed way after its training window closed, right? So if you're asking how to use the latest, greatest Java version or Java feature that I'll just introduce, and it won't be able to figure it out. It can do web search, but this is more efficient. And finally is Frame0, which is another tool. Speaking about architecture, the guys who created Frame0, it's a PhD guy who started this small company, and they make a couple of tools. MK Labs is the name of the company. They have StartUML, which is one of my favorite UML tools, and it's one of the most affordable ones too. For some strange reason, UML tools for a while were like 5 figures minimum.
I remember, yeah, rational. Yep.
And this thing is like under $100. It's a great
Amazing
little UML tool, and it works great. And it has an MCP server. Frame0 is more of a wireframe tool. If you use Balsamiq, it's very similar to Balsamiq. The design language is very similar. And so what's cool with that is you can tell your LLM, like, create a functional or create a wireframe of this UI. I have a concept master or list, detail view, and I want to have images, text, labels. This is the UI I have in my head. Show me some wireframes. Or if you're already good with wireframes, you created one, you can tell the LM implement this wireframe, and it will read it, and you can build you the UI. It's a different way of communicating information to the LMs, which is something I'm really interested in, is how you talk about documentation, how to instruct the LM. Yeah, I could write you a markdown file, or here's an image, here's a wireframe, here's a UML diagram, here's a different artifact translated into code.
All right, excellent. Well, mine's why you know host. It's yunohost.org. It's the thing I like about it. I'm not using the service per se. I really enjoy the catalog. When you go there, it's in Arabic initially. You just need to change the language up in the upper right-hand corner. But it talks about self-hosted, which I've really been a big fan of. And I said I was going to do more this year, and it's not going too well. But the thought is there to where you own your email, you own your blogs, you own everything, and you're not for sale. And so I'm really, wanting to promote that as well. You own your social media, so Michael and I are really into Mastodon as well. So I think there's a lot to be said there. So that's just one of the things that I'm interested in as well. So Michael, I don't know if you had a pick yourself other than your DevRandomTV, any kind of software tool or anything that you think others may enjoy.
Well, years ago, I mentioned reading Fielding's paper. That's the paper that famously introduced REST in Chapter 5. And that kind of turned into a whole rabbit hole for me. And as I got deeper and deeper down just that aspect of it, I kind of stumbled into the semantic web, if anybody remembers that, long after all the interest had died out. And as I was looking at it from kind of my perspective as a seasoned, war-hardened architect, it's like, some of these technologies, yeah, okay, I get the semantic web thing isn't happening really, even though it kind of quietly was.
Right. Yeah.
That it was like some of these technologies solve really common problems, like solve the problems. Like we treat the symptoms, but some of these technologies actually attack the disease. And I didn't really know what to do with it. I've talked about these things for years, but what I've been seeing in the AI space is a need for semantics in our data, a need to think about things like ontologies. And it turns out there's a whole suite of tools and standards and technologies that are just waiting for us. And so on my own, I've been doing a lot of R&D in that space with AI and semantic data rather than inferred semantics. It's explicit semantics. And my entire experience with AI has changed. And I'm seeing a lot of other people starting to take notice of this and talk about this. So if I were to do a pick, I'd say just start paying attention to this idea of semantic data with your AI. That we don't want to just hyperscale GIGO. We want value, and that's, I think, one of the indispensable tools. So knowledge graphs, things like JSON LD, these are things we should start paying attention to. They offer real value in this space, and a differentiator in value at that.
All right. Well, excellent. Well, thank you very much, Michael. Just
Thank
as a
you.
reminder, everyone, Off Heap and Java Pub House are all sister or sibling podcasts that we share with, and some events coming up. Arc of AI, Austin, Texas, April 13th through 16th. New England Software Symposium, Boston, April 30th to May 1st. Code Remix, May 11th through 13th. And we have Greater Wisconsin and Madison, May 28th through 29th. We have some other ones coming up, but that'll be later on in the year. Well, very excellent. Well, thanks everyone for joining, and thank you, Ian and Michael. And appreciate you coming in this unseasonably warm afternoon.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Michael, for joining us. Thanks, Daniel.
Appreciate it.
Pleasure was all mine. Y'all are awesome. Thank you.
All right. You are awesome as well. Good luck with your next video.
Take care, everybody. Stay safe.
All right. See ya.